Hello, welcome to My Startup TV. I'm Major Sunil Shetty. Today is Friday and we are back with another episode of Thought Leader Show. Now, funding is something that every founder is not only worried about, but also there are questions around it, there are queries around it, there are concerns around it when they want to raise funding. And the higher you go, from angel to VC, the challenges are different and there are myths and stories around it. Depends on whether you secured funding or you didn't. Depending on what side of the divide you fall in, the stories, the experiences are different. Now, to decipher this, I have with me a special guest, SAYANEE Bhowmik, who's the founder, who's been an ex-VC and also a mentor. She's mentored over 100 plus startups to raise funding. So let's dive straight into the interview and check as to what are the areas, what are the no-go areas, what are the red flags, and what founders need to keep in mind when they approach an VC. SAYANEE, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sunil. I think this has been a pleasure. And obviously, in any way I can answer any question which can help early stage founders to raise funds, I'm happy to help. Thank you for having me on the show.
Here's the pleasure have you on the show. So, SAYANEE, when we start, one of the things that I want you to do is to paint a picture of what's the current, scenario or current situation when it comes to funding, especially as a VC. You've been a VC, part of the VC firm. So, how do you read it today when you look at it? I mean, this will help a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are in the early stage, who are there in the first 2 3 years. That forms our core audience in the first 1 to 5 years of their journey. So just help in painting the picture as to what's the scene at this point in time for the startup ecosystem when it comes to raising fund from.
So I think venture capital is a part of a bigger ecosystem, which is private equity or primary markets. So if you see that market is actually divided in secondary and primary market. So primary market is basically the unlisted market, which has not been listed or the shares are not open for the public, right? So I think VC as an ecosystem has always been there, but it has only just got structure in last 10 to 15 years as a concept. By the way, venture capital was previously called adventure capital because the idea was that to back very crazy ideas in the US, in the Silicon Valley. There were students who came right out of Stanford who were half mad and they just wanted to do something. So people just out of adventure they just put in money, and that's how this whole concept came into the existence. And that's why.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's how venture capital came into the existence. And I think this is evolving. It is becoming much more mature. In India, it just came like 5 to 6 years back. I think till date, it has not matured enough, but we are on the way to becoming much more matured as an industry. And startup ecosystem is also thriving, at its best in the history of India. So very happy to see that.
I agree with you. I've been for part of the startup ecosystem since 2010 and seen how things have evolved, and I think it's only picking up pace as you go into time. So I was just about to add, when I interrupted you, was I like the whole concept of I'm a supporter of the adventure capital rather than venture capital, because it's only when founders take risk and the investors take risk that things like WhatsApp, things like the Googles of the world can actually take shape, isn't it? If everybody was to go back and say, what do I get for it, for the money I put in? Well, then there are other instruments. Stock market is one of them, isn't it? So somehow I personally, kind of believe in the adventure capital than the VC. But then, well, that's another discussion. So, you said, you made a comment that it's maturing. What's happening at this standpoint? I mean, what's it that is why we are not there where we should be as an ecosystem, though we are very young when you compare to the US market or the European market? What is that keeping us back or holding us back?
Uh, First of all, as an emerging economy, there is very less liquidity in the market in general for these kind of ventures, right? I mean, now India actually were, I think, one of the first developing nations to where the startup ecosystem or the venture capital got support from the government. I think after 2020 and 2022, this period of boom in the startup ecosystem, now Europe has actually woken up. So India actually was, in the race since last 5 6 years. So that is one of the good things that has happened in India. However, uh, as a concept, it's very immature yet, and that's why people like me and you exist, where we are, bridging the knowledge gap. There's very less understanding about this area as a fundamental. So, like I meet founders, and there are many good businesses which I see, but they don't understand what is fundable, what is not fundable. There are some very niche businesses, but that doesn't justify the numbers for a VC or a venture capital firm. So then they become upset and they say that maybe my idea is a failure or something. So, that level of maturity is not there yet. Secondly, the this side of the table, investor side of the table, I think there are many generalists who are coming into the scene. The people who evaluate your startups when you're going for like a VC funding or first two calls that you have. It generally happens with people who has done an MBA, and right out of school they have come and they're judging your startup. So it doesn't work that way. You know, as a generalist, it is very difficult for a person to uh, understand companies in very very different sectors, where you need a very very deep knowledge to understand what that founder is doing, or what that founder is passionate about, or how the markets are doing in that sector. Always numbers are not the only truth. Sometimes somebody who has stayed in that industry for 20 30 years, has been a veteran, will understand that industry much better than a generalist like a 24 25 year old who just came out of MBA college. So I think there is a gap there. So there are many good ideas which are being missed by the ecosystem. And third, I think uh, venture scalability is a concept which I'm sure that most of you have, like most of the audience knows that there is a idea of valuation. There is idea of cash burn in startup, which doesn't happen with traditional businesses, right? You cannot burn money for years in order to become a company. This market capture, all these concepts are very much limited to the startup ecosystem. Like I'll give you an example. Like a founder thinks that they should jump from funding to funding in order to make their business profitable and then exit at a point, and they just make money out of it and they become a millionaire. So and some people just want to do a startup because it's a shortcut to earn a lot of money. But that as a concept has evolved in the Western world now. It started this way, but then it evolved to a much more mature place where profitability, sustainability, and a responsibility towards the world is also important when it comes to raising capital and building startups. So that is missing yet. There are many micro VC funds. There are many investors out there who still just thinks that venture scalability is something which will give them money. But in the long run, if you want to sustain as an industry, there has to be sustainability. There has to be companies which stays for decades, not just 5 or 6 years. So yeah, so I think that is missing.
Uh, Very rightly, you brought out the point that there is a lack of understanding on either side of the table, right? And I like the whole concept of, or the word you coined, journalist. Who are coming into this and evaluating startups. Now that is a problem at every stage, not necessarily at VC. We as My Startup TV, we go to numerous startup pitches and we see this is what we see. People with very limited understanding of the sector they're judging. Just because they happen to be in the ecosystem, some people know them, they end up being there, and that kind of becomes counterproductive to founders because they kind of go back thinking that their idea is not good, or even it creates a, I know for sure in some of the cities where we were, that the founders started avoiding pitching sessions because they felt nothing is going to come out or people are not understanding. Because at the end of the day, you're getting 3 minutes to pitch your idea and get something out of it, right? So, as a VC, ex VC, and as a mentor, when you talk to your founders or you talk to founders, what is that important here? You tell them. I mean, to get that right message out there in the first go without bothering about the numbers, or is it numbers that is more important to the VC than or a combination of the idea and the numbers?
I think it's entirely different. Tell them that when you don't have numbers and you just have an idea on a paper and pen, then seek people who have walked your path in the very very well if it's in the same industry. If not, at least somebody who has walked your path, maybe in some other industry but similar path. I'll give you an example. Like let's say brokerage as a stock brokerage as a concept in India is very old, very old. Like it has stayed since the markets were there. But tech in the brokerage industry or licensing in the brokerage industry, there have been players who come and who disrupt that decades after decades. But still, there are people who are very confused about this industry because there are financial regulations, and like with one article of SEBI, everything just falls down. So this is now a person who, say for example, has built a business in FMCG. Now you do not expect that person, even though that person has money, you do not expect that person to understand how brokerage functions, right? So if you're introducing technology into the brokerage ecosystem, so you either take money from somebody who understands the technology, has built a technology company and has made some money, so they can put in money to you and also become a partner on your vision, or you go to somebody who has been in the brokerage business, either the industry or the X factor that you're bringing. So one of the two, if you can seek from the investor, that is better. If you go with, even with numbers, with a good idea, with a good business plan, an FMCG founder, even though they have done business, it's very difficult for them to understand what you're doing. So they will, on the door, they'll dismiss it. And investors do not ever say that they are wrong. They just say that your business is wrong. So that's, unfortunately, that's the thing. So as I said, coming back to the, like, if I have to just touch upon the last question that you asked me. So I think this is where also the evolution is going to happen, right? And now the money is very much concentrated on the traditional businessman who has been running businesses or family businesses for over 2-3 decades. Now going forward in next 10 years, I think all these startups who have raised money, who have taken an exit, will be the people who will be putting in money forward to the next generation of startups. So that time, this whole conflict or this whole understanding problem will not be there, probably, I think. So yeah, hopefully that's how it can turn. Yeah.
Because when it comes to putting your own money, the game changes, isn't it? So now switching to the other side, where one is to raise fund, the other is to manage that part, and we have seen in the last I think couple of years multiple unicorns have failed, and at every time it has been the founder at the center of the failure, and that has been because of various reasons. Now, as a VC, what is that, ex VC or a mentor, what would you tell founders? Because when you see as an investor, as an angel investor, which I have personally invested in some of the startups, one of the things I always said was, I may have given you the money, but please understand the money belongs to the company, not to you. So that distinction, that the money that you raised is not yours, it's as a founder, it's the company's money. How do you see that? What would be your message for founders there?
There are good and bad people. There are good founders and bad founders. If the intention is right, then they'll probably be very frugal from day one because they want to build a long-term business. And for a long-term business, they need money, and they want to stretch their money as long as possible. Like there are founders I know personally who has gotten good amount of funding, but they don't want to experiment at all because they don't want to spend money at all. And obviously, there are founders like, we recently saw what happened to Blue Cars, and how they have misused the money. So I think it's a more of an intention problem. And as a VC, you can just judge that person. So I think that brings me to a very significant point. In the early stage, it's not about the idea, the metrics, or anything as such, right? It's mostly about the understanding the founder market fit, that whether the idea that person has, can he and his team, or she and her team can execute it properly, and how much, and as a character, as a person, how they are. Because as an investor also, I'm sure you understand that you also have to go on with them in their journey for next 5 to 7 years. So you wouldn't want to get associated with somebody you don't get along. So yeah, I mean, if you're unable to manage it as a founder, then maybe have professional help. 100%. That's my advice to early stage founders. If you don't understand how to manage it, but at the end, if the intention is incorrect, then nothing, I think, can stop them from misusing it. As an investor, you can just confront them and take the money back if you want. But I think by that by the time you realize that, it's too late. Yeah.
That's the thing I was coming to, right? These are things that you come to know about the other person or the founder only once you get into the journey, right? And then once you're in, many times it would take some time, and it's probably too late. So coming to that, just extending that point, in your experience, what is that separates founders who have been able to scale their startup vis-a-vis those who failed? Founders. What is the thing? One thing that differentiates, or two things that differentiates founders who have been able to scale their startup vis-a-vis ones who have failed. What differentiates them?
I think there are two kinds of founders that I come across. One is who is passionate about the product, and another is who is passionate about the business. I think the probability of somebody who is passionate about the business, the probability of their success is actually something which is better, because as a company, if you want to sustain like a company, then definitely the product pivots over time. You cannot stick to one product, one mindset, and you cannot be very strict about it. So I think the founders who are much more flexible and they want to be in the business by any hook or crook, are the people who at the end succeed. Then people who are very much passionate, again, it is not a bad thing, but who are very much passionate about the product, I think they fall short when it comes to seeing the bigger picture, and seeing and understanding that your business is failing and you need to pivot, or you need to restructure your entire company overnight. So fast iterations and less stickiness with the product is something I think is a is like are two characteristics which 80% determine that that person is going to probably succeed. But of course, 20% is luck, market, and also like a lot of external factors. But 80% is that.
And when you talk about the founders, uh, so if you could help, because many of our viewers are early stage entrepreneurs, and also aspiring entrepreneurs, probably who are student entrepreneurs. What is the matrix, if you could put it like that, point system, because that's what they understand. So if you're looking, if a pitch deck comes in front of you as a VC, how would you grade them? I mean, what are the points you would give for, let's say, idea, team, scalability, product fit, all of that? How would you divide that? What becomes more important and what becomes kindly, okay, if it is not up to the mark, we can look into it later, but we like the idea and we would invest for the understanding of early stage entrepreneurs.
So I think depending on the stage of the company, of course, the metrics evolves with rounds or with the evolution of the company. But in the very early stage, when it's ideation or they have just launched an MVP, I think it's mostly the founder market fit, as I said. The founder, the chemistry between the co-founders, if you have any, and also the like your background, like as a founder, and that gives me that basically the background should be strong enough for an investor to justify that you are going to use off in next 5 to 6 years. That's one. Second, market size is very important, which we see in the very early stage. Again, it's an idea. As an investor, also every investor understands that it can pivot and everything. But understanding the framework in the founder's mind is also very important. That how that person has come down to this product. What kind of market does he see or she sees, and does that person understand the scalability of it? And if if that person understands, then probably they will, if they pivot also, they'll pivot around that structure. But if that person doesn't understand it at all, then probably they are just like very much passionate about the product. And third thing, up to certain extent, team, like what kind of team are they bringing on the table? If they have a pre-existing team of 5 to 6 people also, I think that is very important to understand. Yes.
And as a VC, you would the preference be something where there's an MVP there or just an idea?
MVP, 100%. Any day, proof of concept is very important. But I think early stage
The
founders.
biggest problem that I found with them is they, I think, overestimate the idea of MVP. So MVP can be as simple as a WhatsApp group. MVP is basically understanding that your idea is validated in the market. Like I also said it in one of the other interviews, that when you are an employee or when you have worked, say, for 5 6 years, then you're surrounded by a group of people who influence you, right? Who is your bubble. And then you realize that whatever idea you have is being faced by in that bubble only. And then you validate it with your friends, with your family, with some people outside of your circle. But that's often not true. You need to go out and ask random people whether they want it or not. So some kind of validation, that kind of validation is needed. Like say if you have just created a website, send a message that this is what we are going to build, and maybe start a wait list, right? That if you're interested in the idea, then just subscribe to the idea, and once we have launched, we will let you know. Or something like Ola started with a WhatsApp group, where they used to manage all the cabs and the demand and supply through that WhatsApp group. They didn't need to build a full-fledged application for that. So something which actually validates the idea outside of your circle is an MVP for us. Until and unless it's very deep tech, hard tech, something which is going to revolutionize or something like that. But if it's a concept, it's an idea in the minimum version in which it can be validated, can be an MVP. That is good enough. But just an idea is not very compromising.
And it doesn't matter, or it does matter, if they've already raised any round of funding and or they have revenues.
In the early stage, really. We are in for the long game. So the revenue that they are doing in the very initial stage doesn't really create a lot of importance to the kind of multiples we are looking for, the kind of return we are looking for, right? So no, not in the early stage. Early fundings, yes, if it's a big round, like a pricing round where there's a VC who came in, then definitely we would like to do some background check and understand that why they invested and have a deep conversation with their POC there in that VC. But yeah, not too much, not very much important.
So to see next 5 years, I know you already touched upon it, of that the VC environment is going to be mature. Where do you see it going? I mean, is it going to be all tech driven, or there also going to be the adventure capital is going to return back at some stage? I'm talking purely from the Indian context, because I think one of the things that's missing in Indian context is the fact that adventure capital is near to zero. So is that is that going to happen in next 5 years' time? You think that kind of appetite is going to come among angel investors, venture capital?
No, absolutely. I think there are 2, 3 points that I would like to touch upon. First is, as I said, the industry as a venture capital as an industry will evolve with time. I think we are behind, when it comes to the idea, the concept, the validation, etc. So the focus will be more on sustainability, on on very very strong companies, strong fundamentals, which will stay for a longer time. Right now, that is not the focus. Uh, Secondly, I think with increase in disposable income in the Indian retail investors as well. I mean, we have seen a shift in the market. The DIIs in the secondary market have increased a lot. So, of course, people like me and you are also thinking of investing in startups, which was not there. 10 years back, people only used to do FDs. So from there to stock market, to stocks, to crypto, to startups. So I think we have evolved a lot, and obviously this is very promising. And I think as we grow as an economy, the number of people who are like us will also increase. So I'm sure there is going to be a much more local capital available compared to now. Now I think still, like, the check size is much more bigger in the West than in India. So people are very much gravitated towards the Western ecosystem. So I think that will change. Japan is very much emerging as one of those countries who wants to invest in startups. I mean, in Bangalore itself, if you go to any networking event, you will see one Japanese there, which is very promising. And I mean, as India as a startup ecosystem is also gaining a lot of attention from our neighboring countries, which is also very promising. So, of course, I think these are the few changes which will take place, and this is a very good time to actually start something.
Oh, definitely. We were, couple of few months back, we were in Startup Mahakumbh at Delhi, and we did see the interest from, South Korea, Indonesia, and investors looking at Indian startups. So I think, well, as you said, there is an interest, and this is only going to grow because there is so much of noise or talk around startup ecosystem in Indian startup ecosystem, and that's going to help. So now let's switch and talk about your mentoring role. So for the benefit of entrepreneurs out there who would want to benefit from your experience of being an ex VC, what kind of support do you provide for startups as a mentor?
So I think
I picked very meticulously like few startups which actually are like almost there, but they just need somebody to give it a structure. So there, I provide the maximum amount of value through my knowledge. Second, I think there are many startups who understand startup or find startup as a concept very fascinating, but don't understand the whole fundraising economics that goes behind it, and how to be smart. Like, there are many founders who burn their hands in the first or second round, and then they realize that what they have done or not. So I'm there to prevent those. Third, I think through my newsletter, I think my newsletter is very much focused on this whole idea of how an investor thinks, how in like from an investor POV, how investment happens, on the backstage. So, and I only devote it and I write it and collate it in such a way that it is only beneficial to the early stage founders. Like, I break it down, I simplify it as much as possible. And yes, I think I'm bridging the gap between founders and VCs through the knowledge gap that they have. And all this conversation that we had, I think this is also one step ahead towards my mission. So yeah, thank you so much for throwing light on it.
Definitely. We, as My Startup Media House, that's our vision. That has been our goal to bridge that gap and connect with thought leaders, domain experts like you, with early stage entrepreneurs, because that's where the major gap is. Typically, what should be, at what stage entrepreneurs should try to connect with you? Early stage, or they've gone to an MVP stage. At what stage you would come into play, or they should connect with you?
Once you have an idea, you can reach out to me for the initial call, and I can give you next steps to execute that idea in a way so that it is much more concrete and much more structured for to be presented in front of an investor. And second, you can reach out to me once you have built an MVP, but maybe just don't understand how this economy works. Then I can create a strategy for you where you can understand, or where you can be much more knowledgeable and informed, like what to negotiate, how to negotiate, what to present, what not to present, and how to structure it so that it gains the interest of the investor. Because investor speaks in a certain language, and I think not everybody needs to know that. Like, definitely they have knowledge in their own domain, but in order for that knowledge sharing, I connect with them. So I can be connected on LinkedIn, but I'm very much active on my newsletter, my Unicorn Club, on Substack. So anybody can subscribe to that and reach out to me through DM, or can email to me. And yeah, I think that's like a more case to case basis. But yeah, I try to help them as much as possible through my knowledge.
And also the fact that you have a database of 1500 plus investors, that would come handy, isn't it? That was the first thing that caught my attention. So,
Yes, absolutely. It should. Um,
I mean, I collated it over a few years, and then just people just started asking for connections. So instead of making one-on-one warm intro, I just gave them an entire list that go and connect with them. Maybe take my reference if you want, but uh, instead of going and searching and making a list, I just send you a list and you just make a pitch deck, make a pitch. I'm sure that one will respond.
as a founder myself, I would say that's a gold mine. If you could get at one place where you don't have to the hard work of search. Because the other thing is, we don't even know. On LinkedIn, you would find many of them claiming to be angel investors, right? We don't even know whether they did something. Which is the truth. I've come across many of them who've probably not invested, a rupee, but then on the profile it looks like an angel investor. But then coming from somebody like you who's been in the system, at least there is some level of confidence to say yes, this data is verified. As a mentor for entrepreneurs, what would you say? Should they chase, should they build around a global, the emerging trends across the world, or focus on Indian problems?
that's a very interesting question.
Because most of the startups that I see have a very less global sentiment. I'll tell you why. Because it is natural that India as a is a consumer based economy. So there is a lot of consumption that happens in India, and there are many companies who do not need to go outside of India to become a unicorn. They can just build a company here and tap the market and reach where most of the companies are not able to reach, even through their global outreach. So most of the founders make for India, but I think global sentiment is missing, and I would encourage people to think more global. Uh, this is again a mindset which is there in the US and in the developed economies like Singapore or Dubai. If you go there, then the people are building for the globe. But in India, like coming from a middle class family who has worked for 5 6 years in the industry, and then they want to they have a dream of building a startup. But even that time also, they are very conservative. They want to build only for a very safe sector of the country. But I think if you're going in, then go all in. Build for the world, build globally. I mean, there are just like few companies that I can count on my fingers who have gone global. So, yeah.
So now, personal question: if you were to start a fund of your own, what would be your focus area?
Start a founder.
No, fund, a fund of your own.
Achha, okay, fund of my own. I would, my focus would be to invest in companies who are building for the emerging markets in the world right now. I think there is a lot of potential and like huge alpha when it comes to return, right? If like I'm a finance person, I only think in numbers. So the amount of alpha that will be generated through emerging economies will be much more than any other developed country in the world, because they will, and they some have and some will reach a state of saturation in some point. So I would probably invest in companies who are building solutions for the emerging markets like Southeast Asia, India, or Africa, or some of the emerging economies. So that I think is a very exciting space right now, and maybe focused on AI native startups and climate tech, because those are something which is coming forward. Yeah.
So, as before I let you go, I want to ask you a question about us. And we, as My Startup Media, we are 6 years old, or rather, going to complete 6 years this August. And we're a platform that is, we started off to bridge a gap or cover the gap where the mainstream media was not looking at, which is focused to startups. So all through our four verticals, which is our monthly digital magazine, OTT platform, My Startup TV, where we broadcast 24/7, where we host founders, cover live events across India, startup events only exclusively, bring thought leaders like you, and then podcast. What do you think about the kind of work we are doing?
Absolutely amazing, sir. I mean, there are much more. I think as many people in the ecosystem can spread this knowledge, I think it is important. Secondly, startup founders who are just starting out, I'm sure like you know like platform like you can actually give a big push to them through validation, through recognition, through distribution up to certain extent. And when somebody is doing startup at a very early phase, I'm sure that even a little bit of push is actually very, very significant for them, because when they're struggling, they're in the journey, they're mostly alone, to be honest. And I'm sure, like people like you who talks about this industry so freely, so frankly, makes them feel that they are not alone, including me, I think. Like talking and listening to all the interviews that you have covered, and all the videos and your OTT platform, and your news channel and everything, I think it gives me also validation up to a certain extent that uh, the world is not closed, and the problems that I face on a day-to-day basis building my own community or anything, I think uh, if that helps me so much, then I'm sure like a startup founder who has left everything, their source of income, family doesn't understand their relationships and everything, when they're building, when they talk to you, definitely they sleep well that night. So kudos to you, kudos to your team, and you're doing a wonderful, wonderful work. And I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you much for being on our show and for all your kind words. And yes, we will continue to do that. We are scaling as we get into sixth year. We are changing our format. We are pivoting. And viewers, if you want to hear such interesting conversations with thought leaders, domain expert, do join us every Friday at 4 p.m. for the live show. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sayani. Thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too.